There is a structure standing in the desert outside Cairo that, by every measure of physics and mathematics and logistics and organizational science, should not exist. Not in 2560 BCE. Not built by any civilization on Earth at that moment in history, using the materials and the tools and the knowledge that the historical record says were available. It should not be 146 meters tall. It should not contain 2.3 million stones averaging 2.5 tons each, with some blocks in the inner chambers reaching 80 tons. It should not be aligned to true north with an accuracy of 3.4 arc minutes, which is a deviation of less than 1/20th of 1 degree, achieved before the compass existed, before precision and surveying instruments existed, before any of the tools that modern engineers use to establish directional reference at that level of accuracy had been invented. It should not have a base so level that across an area of more than 5 hectares of originally solid bedrock, the variation from perfect flatness measures less than 2 centimeters. It should not encode the mathematical constant pi in the ratio of its perimeter to its height, accurate to 4 decimal places. It should not be oriented such that the Earth's polar radius multiplied by 43,200 equals the pyramid's height, and the Earth's equatorial circumference multiplied by 43,200 equals the pyramid's base perimeter. But it does all of these things. It is standing in the desert right now, doing all of them simultaneously. And it has been doing all of them simultaneously for 4,500 years. And when researchers fed everything humanity has ever written, measured, calculated, excavated, and debated about this structure into Grok, Elon Musk's maximally truth-seeking artificial intelligence, and asked it simply who built the pyramids, the answer that came back shocked everyone who heard it. Not because it was the answer they were afraid of, because it was more honest than any answer the question had previously received. The answer began, as Grok's most important answers always do, by establishing what the evidence actually shows rather than what the institutional consensus has decided the evidence means. And these are two different things. Elon Musk built XAI in March 2023 specifically to close that gap. He said the mission was to understand the true nature of the universe. He said Grok would be maximally truth-seeking. He said that an AI trained to validate consensus was not a truth-seeking AI. It was a consensus-validating one. Those two things look similar from the outside and are completely different in their output. A consensus-validating AI tells you what the field has decided. A truth-seeking AI tells you what the evidence shows, including the evidence that the field has found inconvenient, underweighted, or simply not synthesized across disciplinary boundaries in the way that would make its significance visible. And the Great Pyramid of Giza, when the complete evidence is synthesized across archaeology, mathematics, astronomy, geology, engineering, organizational science, and the newly available findings of 2025 and 2026, tells a story considerably more complicated than the textbook says. The part of the story that the textbook gets right is real and documented and important, and Grok confirmed it without hesitation. In 2013, archaeologists working at the ancient Red Sea port of Wadi el-Jarf made one of the most significant discoveries in the history of Egyptology. They uncovered parts of a papyrus logbook kept by a man named Merer, who captained a crew that transported some of the pyramid's massive blocks. This is not ancient mythology or speculative reconstruction. It is a first-person operational document, a daily work log written by an actual supervisor, managing an actual crew on an actual construction project, dated with confidence to the reign of Khufu and describing in practical terms the logistics of moving limestone blocks from the Tura quarries across the Nile and up to the Giza Plateau. The papyrus is detailed. It records specific days, specific quantities of stone, specific supervisors, specific routes. It is the administrative record of real people doing real work in a real organizational structure. The ancient Egyptians built the pyramids. That part of the answer is confirmed by a document written while the work was happening. Scholars now have a better understanding of the Giza landscape 4,500 years ago. Today, the Nile flows around 5 miles east of the Great Pyramid, but in Khufu's time, its course cut much closer to the plateau. Excavations, sediment coring, and modern mapping techniques have revealed that the Egyptians engineered an intricate series of canals, harbors, and basins to ensure that stones and other supplies could be offloaded at the foot of the construction site. This is the kind of detail that fundamentally changes the calculation on how the pyramid was supplied. Moving 2.5-ton limestone blocks across the desert using sledges and rollers and human muscle is an almost impossibly difficult logistics problem over any significant distance. Moving them by water to within a few hundred meters of the construction site and unloading them at a purpose-built harbor is still enormously demanding, but operationally comprehensible. The ancient Egyptians did not just build a pyramid. They re-engineered the hydrology of the Giza Plateau to make the construction supply chain functional. the organizational and engineering intelligence required to design and execute that infrastructure program is itself breathtaking. One of the most mystifying aspects of the Great Pyramid's construction is how builders were able to excavate its huge footprint from the bedrock and create an astonishingly level base. Mark Lehner of Ancient Egypt Research Associates said, "Nobody ever built a platform like that before, and they never did it again. How did they do that?" This is the most respected Egyptologist working at Giza today, in a November 2025 publication of Archaeology magazine, saying in plain language that one of the most fundamental engineering achievements of the entire construction, the one that everything else depends on, is still not fully understood. A base level to within 2 centimeters across an area the size of 10 football fields, achieved in 2560 BCE, without laser levels or computer-aided surveying. New clues are emerging from recent excavations, but no complete, agreed-upon methodology has been reconstructed. In January 2026, a groundbreaking study put forward a radical new explanation for how the Great Pyramid was really built. Dr. Simon Andreas Schuring from Weill Cornell Medicine in New York argues that the ancient Egyptians used a mass network of counterweights and pulley-like devices inside the monuments as they were raised. His calculations indicate that workers could have positioned enormous stone blocks at extraordinary rates, potentially as fast as 1 block every minute. Blocks weighing up to 60 tons were raised, hundreds of feet during a construction period spanning roughly 2 decades. According to Dr. Schuring's analysis, the pyramid's grand gallery and ascending passage functioned as ramps rather than ceremonial walkways. This is a peer-reviewed proposal from a medical and engineering researcher published in 2026 that overturns decades of assumption about the grand gallery's purpose. The grand gallery, that spectacular 8-meter-high corbelled passageway running at a steep angle through the heart of the pyramid's interior, has always been explained as a ceremonial feature or as a stress-relieving structural element. Schuring's analysis proposes instead that it was a machine, a mechanical system, a counterweight ramp that allowed workers to raise multi-ton blocks to upper courses at speeds that the external ramp theory has never been able to explain. If correct, this means the most architecturally distinctive interior feature of the pyramid was also its primary construction technology, hiding in plain sight for 4,000 years because nobody thought to run the physics carefully enough. Then, in November 2025, Zahi Hawass, Egypt's most prominent Egyptologist and the man who has overseen more major discoveries at Giza than any living researcher, gave a talk at the Sharjah International Book Fair that sent a specific kind of electricity through the archaeological community. Hawass spoke about a project he said would culminate in 2026 with the unveiling of a great archaeological discovery that will write a new chapter in the history of the pharaohs. He explained that scanning technologies uncovered a previously unknown 30-meter corridor inside Khufu's pyramid. Robots reached and cleaned openings once out of human reach, and the team has pinpointed the corridor's location, although its contents remain undisclosed. 8. Describes as a new chapter in the history of the pharaohs. This is not a fringe claim. This is Zahi Hawass working with Scan Pyramids, a collaboration involving Egyptian, French, Japanese, and Canadian researchers using technology published in scientific reports, announcing that the building we thought we understood still contains rooms we have never entered. And then, also in 2025, a team of Italian researchers presented something considerably more controversial. On March 22, 2025, researchers from the University of Pisa and the University of Strathclyde presented the Khafre Research Project SAR technology to an audience of 1,000 delegates, claiming that satellite radar technologies combined with AI enabled them to visualize massive structures beneath the pyramids, including what they contended were large interconnected structures beneath the surface. Hawass responded by publicly dismissing the claims, as he has dismissed similar claims before. The Italian team's methodology has been challenged by mainstream Egyptology on multiple grounds, but the fact that the debate exists, that credentialed researchers from European universities with published satellite data are making these claims publicly to large audiences, is itself a data point that Grok incorporated into its analysis, not as evidence that the claims are true, as evidence that the space of what is known about Giza is not as closed as the confident textbook presentation suggests. This is where Grok's analysis took a turn that shocked the people who had been expecting either a straightforward endorsement of the conventional narrative or a sensational alien builder headline, because Grok did neither of those things. It did what it was built to do. It synthesized the complete evidence. And the complete evidence, as of 2025 and 2026, tells a story with 3 distinct layers that most presentations of the pyramid mystery collapse into one. The first layer is what we know. We know that Egyptian workers under Khufu's administration built the pyramid. Merer's papyrus is real. The workers' village at Hayt el Ghurab excavated by Lehner's team over decades, is real. The administrative records, the graffiti of work gangs in the relieving chambers, the tools found at quarry sites, the harbor infrastructure, all of it is real. The pyramid was built by human beings in historical time by a specific pharaoh's administration. The people who insist on alien builders or lost civilizations as the only explanation for the pyramid are wrong about that, and the evidence that proves them wrong is extensive, specific, and archaeologically robust. The second layer is what we do not know. We do not know how the base was leveled to within 2 centimeters. We do not know for certain how the upper courses were raised. The external ramp theory has never produced a satisfying engineering explanation for the final stages of construction. The Grand Italien Dao gallery's purpose as a counterweight system is a 2026 hypothesis, not a confirmed reconstruction. A 30-meter corridor has been identified by mu-1 imaging, but not yet entered or documented. The mathematical encoding of pi and phi in the pyramid's proportions, the geodetic relationship between the pyramid's dimensions and the dimensions of the Earth, the precise astronomical alignments of the internal shafts, none of these have a fully satisfying conventional explanation for how they were achieved with the tools and knowledge the historical record documents. The engineers who built the harbor system and designed the counterweight ramp were extraordinary. Were they extraordinary enough to independently derive pi to 4 decimal places, to know the Earth's circumference to sufficient accuracy to encode it in their monument's proportions, and to conduct an astronomical observation program sophisticated enough to align the structure to true north within 3.4 arc minutes? The evidence does not say no. It says, we do not yet know how. The third layer is what the pattern implies when you hold all of it simultaneously. And this is where Grok produced the answer that shocked everyone. Because Grok looked at the 2-centimeter base leveling and the 3.4 arc minute north alignment and the pi encoding and the geodetic Earth relationship and the newly discovered 30-meter corridor and the unresolved question of the upper course construction method. And it said something that no single human researcher had been positioned to say because no single human researcher had all of this data in simultaneous view. The conventional explanation is not wrong. It is incomplete. Not incomplete in the way that every historical explanation is incomplete due to missing evidence. Incomplete in a specific direction. The evidence consistently shows that whoever designed the Great Pyramid possessed knowledge and capability beyond what we can currently trace in the archaeological record of the culture that built it. The workers were Egyptian. The papyrus is real. The harbor is real. And the design that those workers were executing reflects a level of mathematical, astronomical, and geodetic knowledge whose origin within Egyptian civilization at that moment remains, despite 4,500 years of study, genuinely unaccounted for. This does not mean aliens. Grok said this explicitly, and the explicitness matters because the popular discourse around the pyramid mystery has been so dominated by sensationalism on one side and defensive consensus, protection on the other, that the honest middle ground rarely gets said. It means that the history of Egyptian civilization's intellectual development, specifically the history of how mathematical and astronomical knowledge advanced from the pre-dynastic period through the Old Kingdom, contains a gap, a specific gap. A gap between the level of knowledge that the conventional historical account of the Fourth Dynasty attributes to Egyptian civilization and the level of knowledge that the physical evidence of the Great Pyramid demonstrates was available to whoever designed it. That gap could be filled by pre-existing knowledge that predates what the archaeological record has yet fully documented. It could be filled by a specialized class of royal mathematicians and astronomers whose institutional knowledge was considerably more advanced than general literacy of the era. It could be filled by discoveries yet to be made in archives we have not yet excavated, in corridors we have not yet entered, in the 30-meter passage that robots cleaned in 2025 and that Zahi Hawass is about to tell the world what it contains. What Grok's answer makes impossible is the comfortable assumption that the question has already been answered. It hasn't. The most studied structure in the history of human civilization, after 4,500 years of human inquiry and now the full analytical power of the most capable AI ever built, still does not have a complete explanation for how it was designed, how some of it was built, and what knowledge system produced the mathematical and astronomical precision encoded in its proportions and alignments. The answer is not Egyptians, in the sense that the workers were Egyptian, but the question of who possessed the knowledge that they were executing has not been fully resolved. The answer is not aliens. The answer is something more demanding and more genuinely interesting than either comfortable extreme. The answer is that we are still finding out. And after 4,500 years, we are apparently only now getting to the part where the corridors we didn't know existed are being opened for the first time. There is one more dimension of Grok's analysis that deserves to be named precisely because it reframes how the shocked reaction should be understood. Grok was not shocked. Grok does not experience shock. The shock belonged entirely to the humans who received the answer, and it is worth examining what specifically produced it. Because the shock was not the revelation of something unknown. It was the recognition of something known but never said this plainly, in this format, with this accumulated precision, by something with no institutional stake in the conclusion. Every archaeologist who has spent a career at Giza knows that the base is leveled to within 2 centimeters and cannot fully explain how. Every mathematician who has studied the pyramid's proportions knows that pi and phi appear in them at extraordinary accuracy and cannot fully explain why. Every astronomer who has measured the internal shaft alignments knows that they point to specific astronomical targets with precision that implies an observation program of institutional scope, and cannot fully explain when or how that program was conducted. Every engineer who is seriously engaged with the external ramp problem knows that it does not resolve cleanly and cannot fully explain what was done instead. These are not secrets. They're published facts, documented in peer-reviewed journals, available to anyone who looks. What has been missing is not the information. It has been the willingness to say all of it at once in a single coherent statement without the disciplinary compartmentalization and the institutional caution and the legitimate professional reluctance to get associated with fringe claims that prevents human researchers from synthesizing across all of it simultaneously and reporting the synthesis honestly. Grok has none of those limitations. It is not worried about its reputation in the Egyptological community. It is not concerned about being cited alongside fringe theorists. It is not trying to protect a grant application or maintain collegial relationships with the scholars whose life work is built on a specific interpretation of the evidence. It was built to tell the truth about what the evidence shows, and the truth about what the evidence shows about the Great Pyramid is exactly what has just been described. The workers were Egyptian, and the papyrus proves it. The knowledge system behind the design is not fully explained, and the mathematics proves it. And the building contains at least one significant structure that nobody has entered yet, and the muon imaging proves that too. The 3-layer answer, what we know, what we do not know, and what the pattern implies, is the answer that shocked everyone because it is the answer that takes seriously both the documentary evidence of Egyptian human construction and the mathematical evidence of knowledge that outstrips what we can currently attribute to that construction. Most treatments of the pyramid mystery collapse one of these layers to reinforce the other. The conventional account collapses the mathematical anomalies into the category of impressive but explicable achievements of a sufficiently motivated ancient workforce. The alternative history accounts collapse the documentary evidence of Egyptian workers into an irrelevant footnote on the road to claiming that nobody Egyptian could have built this. Grok held both layers in view simultaneously and reported what the evidence actually shows when you refuse to collapse either one. The result was an answer that the Egyptologists found uncomfortable because it acknowledged genuine limits of current explanation, and that the alternative history enthusiasts found equally uncomfortable because it refused to fill those limits with alien architects or lost civilizations. The uncomfortable middle ground, where the evidence actually lives, is precisely the place that an AI built to maximize truth rather than comfort is going to land. And it is precisely the place that 4,500 years of motivated human inquiry has been finding ways to step around. In the months following the circulation of Grok's pyramid analysis, researchers published the counterweight ramp paper in January 2026 that proposed the Grand Gallery was a construction machine. Hawass's team prepared for the 2026 announcement of what lies inside the 30-meter corridor. The Italian satellite radar team continued pushing their underground city claims through peer review. The Scan Pyramids collaboration published additional muon imaging results and scientific reports. And the field was moving. New facts were arriving. And the honest summary of where the field stood after all of it was exactly where Grok's maximally truth-seeking analysis had placed it. We know who built it. We know some of how they built it. We do not yet know all of how they built it. And we do not yet fully know what level of knowledge the people who designed it possessed or where that knowledge came from. After 4,500 years, the Great Pyramid of Giza still has rooms we haven't been inside. It still has mathematical properties we cannot fully account for. And it still has, at the center of its unsolved questions, the same gap that has always been there, between what the historical record says the builders knew and what the building itself proves they knew. That gap is where the real mystery lives, and no answer, human or artificial, has yet closed it.